and welcome to the Bharatiya Janata podcast. My name is Kimaya, and I know you're wondering where your usual host Raj is. He has gone to a pro CA rally, and Aditya has unfortunately been detained in Kailasa. So here I am substituting for them. So today we are going to talk about STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and medicine, and specifically Indian women in STEM. In a previous episode, we have talked about Indian men in STEM and how they're all overwhelmingly right wing. And if you've not listened to that episode, please check it out. So we'll discuss today what are the political choices of Indian women in STEM and what are their motivations and what are their experiences in this field. And we have two very special guests joining us, Shikha and Hartika.
Hello.
Welcome, guys.
Hey.
Hi. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Let's start with Shikha.
All right. So I have a PhD in computer science. I do artificial intelligence in medicine, medical imaging specifically. So basically, identifying tumors in CAT scans, MRIs, that type of a thing. And yeah, I've did my engineering in India. I did my PhD in the US. Um, and I'm a woman in STEM.
Nice, nice. And Hartika, what about yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I did engineering from India, and right now I'm doing a PhD in policy analysis, which is still technically my program is classified as STEM. Does not sound like it, but it is because we're very rigorous like that.
That's great. So
And what about you,
yeah,
Kimaya?
so I am also an engineer, but not as accomplished as you guys. So I did my engineering, wasn't actually super interested in pursuing the technical field. So after my engineering, I worked for a couple of years in India and then did my MBA, like all good engineers. And now I'm working in a tech firm, but actually not in a tech field. So basically, I am a fountain of knowledge of everything on or because I'm an engineer and an MBA. So
Cool.
We're blessed by that fountain of knowledge.
exactly. So I don't know. This is just going to be me talking about myself the whole time.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I heard the previous episode and I was like, my experience is very different. But that's just what I had lived through. So,
Yeah, absolutely. So talking about like going into engineering and then pursuing your advanced degrees as well. Tell us about why you decided to pursue engineering in the first place and what motivated you to pursue that field further, go into research.
I'll start, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, actually, I was really, really interested in science all my life. I was super obsessed with it. I would read a lot. I, you know, would wait every Thursday for this science and technology supplement in the Hindu and read all the articles and be like, oh, I'm going to do this when I grow up. I was super interested. I think I had a lot of encouragement from home as well. Although I don't think my parents necessarily pushed me in that direction, I just developed it. And this is what I always kind of wanted to do.
Oh, nice. And how did your family, like extended family, etc., react when you said you wanted to do engineering and then pursue it further?
So, extended family, I think, they're happy if you do engineering. My own parents were like a little bit surprised, or rather, you know, I think their dream was that I become like an IAS officer. That was a big thing. I think according to my mom, that's like the most respectable profession, like a lady collector. And my dad really wanted to do IAS as well, and he really wanted me to try that, but I was super into science. And not to say that they didn't encourage science education. In fact, like growing up, we really like had a lot of extracurricular interest in science as well. Like we used to do projects in school as well as home.
Yeah.
My dad's like a super geek type of a person, and he loves like building things. So we used to build small models in the house. Like we made a periscope, we made like a pinhole projector camera, we made like soap at home for a science experiment, and all these types of things. And it was super fun. It was definitely like a very open sort of an environment, which I realize that not a lot of people get that sort of exposure when they're growing up. I think a lot of people are like maybe asked to study like rote learn and stuff, and thankfully I didn't have that, at least when I was in school.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I mean, that's great that you actually were genuinely motivated to go into engineering. Because talking about myself, and I've heard so many people say it, I just kind of did it because everyone else around me was doing it. And it seemed like a decent option. And, I wasn't particularly interested in it, which is why I never even really pursued the sort of STEM path going ahead after engineering. But let's go to you, Hardika. Like, what's your story about why you wanted to enter this field?
So we were a Times of India reading family. That definitely no good influence by the Hindu, but I watched too much Discovery Channel. I think that was my I thought like there's this show on Discovery Channel called Extreme Engineering. Okay. And everything was about building a ski slope in the mall in Dubai, which I never stopped to question like why do you want to do that? I just thought it was the coolest shit ever. And like that engineers have like the sexiest jobs ever. And that was definitely it was a very masculine motivation, let me put it that way.
Yeah.
And that does tend to be a thing. I mean, when I was growing up, maybe because I was interested in engineering, math, science, these types of things, I did have like a very masculine environment, and a lot of my friends were male, and it was a while for me to like, I think, discover femininity and like have more female friends and discover my feminist identity, I guess.
Yeah, but that's
Yeah,
yeah, that's
definitely.
actually a good point. Like for me, now that I think back, a lot of because my family and a lot of the Indian middle class in general thinks of like specifically engineering or and maybe medicine and a few other fields as better than at least humanities, and that's what all the men in my family did. It was somehow like I thought I would get more respect if I went into this field. And so like that was like another secondary motivation apart from the fact that it seemed like a good decent option at that time. So that makes sense.
Yeah, I think for me, another thing that was like a part of like the larger context for me was like, yes, as a kid, I thought I wanted to be an engineer, but also, my parents were doctors and they had this thing like you have to pursue science.
Yeah.
And I have an older sister and she didn't want to do science, and I saw like how she was basically bullied into sort of doing it.
Yeah.
And like genuinely when I was in 10th I had this like mental calculation in my head कि बेटा डॉक्टर बन गए ना, देखो बनना तो करना तो साइंस है, यू हैव टू डू साइंस, बट इफ यू बिकम अ डॉक्टर तो बाप के गले पे जिंदगी निकल जाएगी, ठीक है ना. सो ये नहीं करना है तो एक ही ऑप्शन है, चुपचाप इंजीनियरिंग कर लो. And thankfully it kind of went with my interests, so things worked out, but it could have gone south very easily.
That's true. That's true. And talk about like your journey coming to the US now. Like what led you here and specifically like the fields that you are working in. Hardika, you can start.
So I've actually had a bit of a circuitous route. So after getting out of engineering, I had all my friends sort of going into your consulting firms or whatever. I somehow did not. I've still had this romantic notion that no, dude, I came here to become, an engineer. So I actually went and I got a job in like heavy engineering. I was building ships in Calcutta for 2 years, and then the shipyard I was working for went bankrupt. But so I mean, I don't know, like. So after that, I actually went to the Young India Fellowship, and that was a great sort of experience. I had this one professor who came and taught us anthropology. Her name is Mehle Krishnamurti, and I was talking to her about my life choices and what I want to do in the future. And I kept telling her, I'm an engineer. That was like a huge part of my identity. And she was like, yeah, it's a qualification. That's something you can do, but that's not the only thing you can do. And it like hit me like squarely in the middle of my chest, like, fuck. That is so true. So after that, I went and I worked for 3 years with a nonprofit, and they did like social housing and sustainable architecture. So some part of it, so a lot of it was like actually like program implementation. So it was a very managerial role, but it was kind of like it had that startup vibe, so everybody did everything, and so I made drawings also, and I assigned like payment receipts also, and so it there was like a part of my engineering brain was still being used. So I did that for almost 3 years, and then it was like by the end of it, though, I had full burnout. I was like I'm like, this is not sustainable. And then I went to UPenn, and I did a master's in public administration because I was like, dude, there has to be a better way of doing this. I'm going to learn it. And then there I kind of met people who were also like interested in public service and all of that, but I also realized that they were all like genuinely scared of maths and statistics and like programming and shit like that. And I was like, this is like in my wheelhouse, and that's how I sort of got the motivation to do a PhD in policy analysis.
Oh, nice. Nice. What about you,
Yeah.
Shikha?
So for me, so I went to a pretty like a private engineering college in Andhra Pradesh, now Telangana, I guess, and uh, I think even though I started out with very romantic notions of science, the more I got into the engineering world and learned it within the system that it was in India, I think I started getting more and more disillusioned with the whole thing. I had no interest in what they were teaching in college. It just seemed like boring and not what I had imagined it to be. And I was actually kind of flailing. I wasn't sure what to do, and I got a job at a startup in Bangalore, and I worked there for a year. And I was like, yeah, this is not what I want. This is not what I want to do. Engineer, like software engineering, coding day in and day out. I wasn't enjoying it. So I sat and I like thought a little bit about what are the aspects of it that I truly enjoyed. And I did enjoy research still. Like every time I did a project in college, I really enjoyed that. Like developing a research model, thinking about a problem, how to solve it, those types of things. So I said, "Chalo, I'll go to the US. I'll give it a try." I was thinking a little bit between PhD and masters, but uh, I ended up coming to do my master's first. And at, at during my master's, I got a little bit of research experience. I worked at a children's hospital,
Nice.
and I was an RA for a professor there, and I loved it. I really loved it. It was everything. All of my romantic notions of science just came back to me, and I'm like, yeah, this is what I want to do. Then I applied for PhD programs, and I did my PhD at Vanderbilt. which is like an awesome environment for engineering and medical collaboration. So it was simply like an amazing environment. I did computer science, but it was mostly medical applications. So uh, we got a lot of like hands-on experience in how things work in the medical world, and I was working with some of the best people in the field. It was really exciting, and I enjoyed it. So yeah, and that's where I am now. That's also what I do in my job currently.
Nice. Nice. I feel like,
That's fascinating.
yeah, I feel like now I have an inferiority complex. Like, you guys are so accomplished, but I have an MBA, so I'll never admit it publicly. But yeah, still. Yeah. So like talking about like now that you're here and now that you've studied so much, etc., and talking about families, like a lot of Indian families get antsy when like their daughters or generally women get too accomplished because of the whole marriage, like who will marry you, etc., etc., especially as you get into like your late 20s, early 30s sort of situation. So how has that
Totally.
experience been for you all? Let's start with Shikha.
Uh, it was definitely that was there, and I think in a way I was a little bit naive because my parents were so encouraging of me when I was a kid, and I thought, oh, they're not going to have a problem with this. But I think it was all fine and dandy until I was in my early 20s, and I had decided to do my PhD when I was around, I think, 25, 26, something like that. And my mom was really upset. She was like, if you start studying now, it's going to take 5 years, and then when will you marry? You won't find any guys. You're gonna be like an old auntie, like,
Of course.
ये सब क्यों करना है? Why can't you just get a job? We should have never sent you to America. All this, like it was
Oh my god.
it was a lot. And my dad didn't say much, but I mean, he was always like, do what you want to do type of a person. But yeah, there was a lot of pushback when I wanted to do my PhD. And to be honest, I also, like, because of how much pressure there was, I was second guessing myself a lot.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh shit, yeah, maybe this is right. Like, if I do this, then I just have to say bye bye to my social life. But I think for me, really, I think the turning point was I went to a woman in computing conference when I was doing my master's. And that was really like an eye opener for me because, as I said earlier, I was in a very masculine environment.
Yeah.
So even though you're doing STEM, you're never thinking about being a woman in STEM. And going to this conference was the first time where I was actually thinking about what are the unique issues that affect women in STEM. And there I met people from all over the world, and everyone at some point did have this dilemma in their life. I mean, women,
Yeah.
that what about marriage? What about children? Like, can we do both of them together? And they found a way to do it. And they were like amazing, inspirational women professors, just like, being surrounded by them. And it was truly, maybe, I think, one of the most motivating experiences in my life to decide that, okay, I am going to do my PhD, and that's it. And I don't care what anyone else says about it.
Nice, that's amazing. But it's, yeah, I'm identifying so much with what you said right now because like the same exact things that your parents said, mine said, we should never have sent you to the US, blah blah blah, who will marry you. So like I'm like majorly identifying. But yeah, Hardika, what about you? How was your family?
So I actually not I don't talk to my father. So that was like one thing less I had to worry about. But I think with my mom, she's she's a surgeon herself. So I think initially, even though she didn't understand it, she, like, especially when I was at YIF, she didn't understand what that was about, but she supported it. She was like, oh, it's like, education. So that was fine. And then I think she started getting worried when I sort of started working with a nonprofit, where she was like, wait, so you're going to just throw away your engineering degree? And I don't know, I've never quite had like like I didn't have like a proper conversation with her about it, but I think her problem was not that I was working, and her problem was that I'm not using my engineering degree as opposed to not getting married, sort of. Um, in the background, I've had a boyfriend, like the same one, for 12 years now. So she had met him, and she sort of knew, okay, हाँ ठीक है यही है, so it was chill until I applied for my PhD and I got in. That was when, and I was, similar age. I don't know, I was almost 29 when I applied. And so she sort of flipped at that point. And so for me, it was like very weird because that was the first time when she was like, wait, it's going to take you 10 years to graduate. I sent you there. I mean, she was like, in her words, I sent you to the US so that you could be with your boyfriend. This is not what I sent you. And I was like, holy shit. I lost it. I was just like, wow, And then I had this like really bad sort of episode on Facebook because I kind of just like put this like really angsty post, which was like, you have, why can't your family be happy about you or some shit like that. And then my roommate, like a former roommate who's like a very good friend of mine, she was like, what happened? And I didn't think about it, and I said like, mom said this publicly, okay? And oh my god, it blew up into such a thing. Like my uncle, like my mom's cousins, some like random uncle I haven't met in a decade is like messaging me saying you shouldn't say things like that about your mother publicly, And I'm just like, thanks for not even asking me what happened. Like you, yeah, yeah.
But like,
So a lot of
Yeah, you
drama.
just don't say anything
yeah,
against
you gotta love
your
Indian
parents.
extended families. They're just like, I'm going to give my opinion on this subject, regardless of everything, basically. But
Yeah, yeah, and I think even for the most progressive families, I just feel like there are limits to how progressive they can be. There always is like a line where after you cross it, they're like, how can you do this?
absolutely,
Is this what we've taught you? And I was like, yeah, this is what you taught me. You taught me to be independent. You taught me to be like, a scientist, like be on your own, do what you want to do. And when we behave that way, they're like surprised and they're like, what are you doing? You need to know your limits. And that's interesting. I don't think I understand why that is, but it seems to be the case for almost any Indian woman I meet.
yeah, yeah, and absolutely, and it's almost like they expect you to sort of be grateful that they gave you all that independence, and like, why
Yeah.
can't you do this one thing, like get married or not do PhD that I'm telling you? Like, I'd let you do so much. So
Yeah.
that's definitely a thing. But moving on to like your growing up years, I know both of you were very, very interested in science and research in general. But one of the sort of criticisms of the Indian middle class and those who sort of pressure their children to especially go into STEM, etc., is there's not a lot of exposure to humanities or arts or any other sort of field. So tell us about like when you were a kid or maybe in college, like were you exposed to different sorts of people or books, etc., and how did that sort of happen for you guys? We can start with Hardika.
Okay, so I think one thing that I'm very grateful for with my parents was that at least my mom always encouraged me to read a lot, and of course it was like very like whitewashed. Like I read a fuck ton of Enid Blyton, which is like problematic in all the different ways. But at least I started reading, you know. So I started reading early. That I am, you cannot underestimate the value of that. Uh, and yes, you're right that in engineering school I didn't like was not exposed to a lot of any humanities pretty much. But after that, when I went to YF, was when it was like we were being taught by Andre Bete, or it was like just this phenomenal sort of range of people coming and talking to you. And granted, they were like really short sort of interactions, but at least it gave you that humbleness of like, shit, I don't know shit, So at least that intellectual curiosity was definitely ignited.
Nice. So what about you, Shika?
So again, I think my parents did encourage me to read a lot. Um, and my dad's a social scientist, so I always had that exposure. In fact, I actually think maybe even though he tried to push some of these things onto me a little bit, like he was like, why don't you read history? You should know this, you should know that. And I just was like, नहीं मुझे साइंस करना है. And and he was very like GK, and during summer holidays, my sister and I, we were told to learn all the world capitals, like all these types of things. Like it was very important for them that we are well rounded and we know everything and we are well read. And I think again it's a little bit unique. But my dad's an academic. I mean, I should have mentioned that he has a PhD, so he kind of wanted that from us. And I once, I mean, we had art classes. Like I went to music. My sister paints. She's an excellent artist. So yeah, we had a pretty good childhood. Like I really don't have anything to complain about, really.
Yeah.
And I realize, like, I'm lucky, and I don't want to come off as Ananya Pandey, who's like my childhood was. I understand that it's privilege, right? I mean, I my parents had good jobs, they had good education, they're upper caste, and they could give us opportunities that a lot of kids unfortunately don't have, and I'm very thankful
Yeah.
for
But
that.
I mean, your dad didn't go to coffee with Karan, so basically you are underprivileged.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. But yeah, I mean, like, definitely, like, when you're an Indian woman and you come, like, you sort of come to this stage of your life, you start realizing how much privilege you have, definitely. And that's like also happened to me as and when I've gotten older and older. Like, to be a woman and have a supportive family and who sort of mostly encourages you is you have to be really, really lucky in India.
Yeah, absolutely. I just don't even foresee it happening any other way for me,
Yes.
like for the kind of a person that I am. And even a lot of my friends who are in STEM, they've had remarkably supportive parents at some level. If because I also do have friends who I went to school with, who are brilliant, who are extremely intelligent, but who kind of got pushed into this, just get married, have children. We are going to spend money on our son's education and our daughter's marriage. Like this was, I mean, especially like in Hyderabad, it was a big thing. People were in general not very progressive. I've seen this happen to way too many friends of mine, and it's heartbreaking. I've seen it happen to family members where brilliant brilliant women had to give up their careers, couldn't pursue what they wanted to do. Um, also didn't have, I think, even being stubborn
Yeah,
and telling your parents that, no, I'm going to do what I want to do, even that sometimes is not a choice for people. The amount of emotional blackmail
absolutely.
that go, yeah, it just makes it impossible.
Yeah, it's all of the conditioning. Like you don't even realize it. Even if you're a feminist, you don't realize how much conditioning
Yeah,
is.
absolutely. And what about you, Kimaya?
Yeah, so for me, like again, my family was pretty similar to both of yours in the sense that there was always a culture of reading. So I got exposed to a lot of different literature and in a lot of different languages as well. So I'm Maharashtrian, so Marathi literature, Hindi literature, English, of course. So that was definitely a great thing, which developed my knowledge in a lot of different fields. And obviously, I didn't really make a ton of use of it. I ultimately went into engineering only without a ton of thought. But now, at this age, I sort of realized that it was a great sort of foundation of just having more overall knowledge in general of how the world works, which a lot of people don't have. So that's great. But
Yeah.
let's take a short break and we'll come back and talk about your experiences in STEM. Welcome back, everyone. So we have Shikha and Hardika with us, and we're talking about women in STEM. So let's move on to talking about your experiences in STEM. You both went to engineering college in India. Tell us a little bit. I mean, Indian engineering colleges are famous for being male dominated. And I mean, we've all heard stories of the sexism and everything out there. So what was your experience studying in an engineering college in India? Adhika, let's start.
Um, Honestly, it was like living your life in under a microscope because you were like you could not just be all the time like somebody is watching you, and it was very very uncomfortable, to be absolutely honest. And I was like I remember, like, all these like gender stereotypes about like, oh, like women gossip, like, oh my god, how much men gossip. It is not even funny.
Yeah,
Like,
Absolutely.
anything you do, somebody will talk about it while you're walking by, and it was just. And I just happen to be one of those people who are like more active in like student organizations and everything, so a little bit more visible than everybody else. So, and those were the days when Orkut was a thing, and it was like on the walls of, it was just like everywhere. Oh my god. And like, even
Yeah, I
though,
forgot about Orkut.
yeah, parts of my life I do not want to revisit.
Yep.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
would like
it's
break
all coming
my
back.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is like, I don't know, this should probably be beeped out, but they would like break down my name as like Hard Dick Kha and things like that. And I'd just be like, what? Like, can you like, please? And yeah, it was like, even though we all cleared like the same exam and got there, it just, they still behaved like I had no right to be there.
Hmm.
And that, yeah, if you're getting like good marks, it's basically because you're sleeping with the prof. Like, there can't be no other explanation whatsoever. Like, of
Yikes.
course, you
Yikes.
know.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like any woman who is like loud, confident, intelligent, did not take fools, did not suffer fools, was just like the ultimate bitch. And so yeah, it was very hard, and it was a very hyper competitive environment. So you just had to be a bro if you ever wanted like any friends in life.
Yeah.
And so I sort of internalized that, and I was like, I totally owned that. Like, yes, I will scar you for life. That is my mission in life. Like,
Yeah, Yeah, I've done that. Like I'd be just intentionally offensive.
That's amazing. Did you go to an IIT, Hardika?
I went to Kharagpur.
Oh, nice, nice. But like, that's amazing that you like were this badass even at like 18, 19. Because like at that age, you usually want like social acceptance. Like it's hard for women in a male dominated space to like speak out, etc., especially when there's an environment of so much like harassment basically. Like how did your female friends, etc., react to all of that?
I think there was like only two ways of reacting, okay? And I would not say what I was doing was super brave. I think it was also, in a way, like trying to get acceptance because, I preface this with saying you had to be a bro. Like, being a bro is like, like becoming toxically masculine is not like a particularly brave thing to do. And I definitely did that. And it scarred people, or like it astonished people because it like, to hear like swear words, like really choice swear words from coming from a woman is like, it does scar people. And yes, I was like sort of notorious in that sense. But it was not like the bravest thing to do, to be absolutely honest. Yeah, so I think but I don't know. There was only like two ways. Either there were like people who would only like talk to the two girls in their class. I didn't even have that choice. I was the only girl in my class. I didn't even have a senior in the cohort above me. Like
Oh my god. Yeah.
it was a lonely existence.
What about hostels and stuff?
So I had, yeah, of course, in the hostel I had girls, but I don't know, like that was also like this weird form of like, um, I don't know. There was like all. I can't explain it. It was
Mm-hmm.
like a deep distrust of boys. I mean, and I'm sure a lot of it was very legitimate because
Right.
they've had experiences where they've been harassed or whatever. So yeah, it was like yeah, it was a very very weird toxic environment to sort of grow into. It was like like I said, very very hyper competitive. And so I ended up becoming a very cruel person, I will say that.
I
and
I
and it took me years to unlearn that.
I understand that. I was thinking about these things a little bit before we started recording, and that is exactly what I thought of myself too. I was cruel. I don't think I was a feminist. Will say that. Just having so many guy friends around you, and you become a bro with them, and even if I felt uncomfortable with what they were saying and doing, sometimes I just went along with it because you want to be the cool chick. You want to show that you're not like other people, and it was toxic. It was definitely not ideal. I had to grow up a lot. I had to. I think it took a few experiences for me to sit up and realize like this is not okay. Like if this guy says something even about a different girl who's not in the room, you can't just let him talk this way. You can't laugh, just to be cool. And it was not. It was weird. Like it was really weird. When I think back to it, I feel a deep sense of embarrassment, shame, guilt. It was, yeah, kind of weird.
No, no, but I mean, I totally get that. Like, in these hyper masculine environments, like, I remember reading an old, like, Harvard Business Review article where basically it said that women have to be in one of four categories if they work in a male environment. One was like ice queen, which is basically you're just like don't talk to anyone and be aloof. One is like one of the guys where basically you just behave like a man.
Hmm.
One was just like I don't remember the other two, but one was I think more like you just be very very feminine and just be sort of like a sisterish type of figure,
Hmm.
type of figure. And one I don't remember, but like I totally get that. But
And
yeah.
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
No, 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 go ahead.
No, I was just saying that even like hanging out with boys, right? Such a toxic thing. Like Hardika said, it's like you're under a microscope. There were so many rumors about me in college, like so much about your sex life, speculation about what's going on. There was one extremely strange rumor that I was a coke dealer. I don't
Oh
know
my
why.
God. What?
I don't know. There's just this thinky. If this girl is this bold, then she must be selling cocaine also. Like this was the kind of extensions that they made to your personality just because you're bold, just because you swear, or just because you have a guy friend.
Yeah,
And it was very hard to like wade through all of that. And I don't know it. And sometimes even like your guy friends, um, I think actually a lot of them definitely cross the line. They don't understand where the limit is. So yeah.
absolutely. And do you guys have like friends, male friends from engineering college now, or like have you found that they've changed, become more mature, or is it the same?
I
Oh,
don't.
definitely the friends I've retained have matured. Like otherwise, you have no space in my life.
Yeah.
Great philosophy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the same thing. I am in touch with a few people, but um, most people have definitely cut them out of my life.
Makes sense. And so, like, after you graduated from engineering and started working, and then came to the US, how has your experience been then, especially working in the US in contrast to India? Is it obviously it won't be as blatantly sexist, but there's ample proof that STEM in the US is pretty discriminatory in terms of gender and race and things like that. So, how has it been for you all? Let's start with Shikha.
I actually had uh, really bad experiences in the US as well.
Oh, damn.
I mean, again, I went to college in the South. Vanderbilt is it's a pretty big university in the
Yeah.
South. So maybe there's a little bit of a culture change. I'm not sure what, but there were definitely a lot of like Chad type bros in
Oh, damn.
and yeah, that, I mean, it was sexist for sure. And they were pretty openly sexist sometimes. Like there was this one guy that I worked with, and he was super into puzzles, and he used to like solve a Rubik's cube in 2 seconds. I mean, not 2 seconds, 2 minutes. All
Yeah.
this type of a thing. And he had a 2-year-old daughter, and I was like, hey, you should teach her these things when she's a kid, so she's gonna pick it up. And he just turned to me and he was like, no, thank you, I want her to have a boyfriend at some time. And I'm like,
What?
this is so sexist. You're
Oh my
literally talking about
god.
your 2-year-old daughter's sex life, and you're saying that she cannot be a geek or she won't find a boy.
I'm so sorry for that girl. I want to go rescue her right now.
Exactly. I could not believe it. And this guy like grew up in New Hampshire. I mean, he
It's
grew up.
pretty like blue, I guess, right?
It's a swing state actually.
Acha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, talking about engineering college experience, sorry, I forgot to like mention mine. And it's
Yeah.
like pretty different from a lot of people because I went to an all women's engineering college. And
Wow.
yeah, it
That
was
sounds like the Amazonia, whatever. Like,
it was
Emily Wonder
but
Woman
like
will come out of it.
yeah, but it was when I got admission, I was sad because obviously I was like, oh, there's no boys. It'll be like so boring, blah blah blah, like how an 18-year-old thinks. But after I graduated and as I grew older, I'm like so grateful for that experience. Like, a there was no toxicity, there was no like all of this terrible harassment, etc. Or and also like the great part of studying in a women's college is that all of the leadership, everything, roles are played by women. So, and there's no like inhibition about it. Like you can go on a stage and speak whatever. You can shout. You can dance freely. You can like wear shorts, and there's like no judgment. I mean, obviously, even in women there is judgment, within judgment, and that's a whole other topic. But it's definitely like better than being in a male-dominated engineering college. And I'm like,
So I will attest to that. I went to in my middle school. I went to an all girls boarding school, and I think I am as loud as I am because I've as a teenager I had the freedom to shout and wear shorts and do everything I wanted. So yeah, that is, and I understand, like, we were teenagers obsessed with boys as any other, but still we didn't have like these weird hang-ups, like we would play kabaddi and tear each other's clothes and shit.
Wow, sounds interesting. I've never been in an all girls environment.
yeah, I mean, there's also a lot of craziness that comes with it because, like, obviously you're young and stupid, and there's ingrained patriarchy there also. Like, we used to judge other girls in our college on how they dressed and stuff like that. So that stuff is always there, but still, like, it it helps like cut out a lot of like all of this toxicity from your life, which is amazing.
So
But
while
yeah.
we're on the topic of like boys, and I just am curious, like, do you guys think that it's easy to form romantic relationships because both of you are very smart, very accomplished, very
Mm-hmm.
educated? When you date, do you find that men find it intimidating? How does it affect your dating life?
Yeah, I mean, men definitely find it intimidating. Like, I have a lot of opinions about everything, about like politics, everything in general, and I don't think they expect it. Like, I've been like, whenever I'm on a date, and especially with an Indian guy, if like the topic comes to politics, etc., they're always surprised that I know anything, and then they're like definitely intimidated. Like even men in my like friend circle or like family are like, oh my god, why does she have so like, why can't you just like not talk so much or be quiet, or you know but that is like definitely there. And as soon as you, and the other thing is that like I have a grad degree, you guys have a PhD, so men also get intimidated if you're like more educated than them, like informing romantic relationships, etc. Like definitely that's a thing. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I haven't actually dated in a really long time, but
Yeah.
just today morning I was conveyed this experience. This friend of mine, she dumped a guy, and in reporting that, she told me there is only so much I can dilute my intellectual capacity for my pussy. So I think,
Let's put that on a t-shirt.
yeah, I could. When she said that, I'm like, you know what? I am recording this podcast today. I am going to quote it. And then this is just, yeah, this is, every woman needs to hear this.
Yeah,
Every
yeah.
woman.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, your
Yes.
pussy needs happiness, and there's machines out there for it. But like self respect,
Yeah. I
Absolutely.
mean, and definitely, like, I've had experiences even in previous long term relationships, that they were definitely intimidated by uh, the things that I did sometimes. And in fact, I think with my ex, I remember once. So my mom told me that don't tell him how much you make because he's going to feel like lesser than you. And I'm like, are you serious? Like, this is just, yeah. I mean, and the thing is, she was right. She wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
So it happens. Yeah. I mean, like it was, yeah. I've
Yeah,
definitely.
I think my experiences have been more that, not that, that kind of insecurity, but, the whole like they don't step up for you. Like, for example, over the summer, my boyfriend's parents were visiting, and I went to see them too. And his mom just very casually started telling me, oh, I've put the tea here, I've put the fish here. And I'm just like, why are you telling me all of this? I don't live here. Like, I'm not responsible for what goes where in his kitchen. And if I tell my boyfriend this, he'll throw a tantrum at his mom about it, and then she'll come and tell me like, oh, no, this was not like, she will like
Yeah.
overcompensate. But I'm just like, no, I want you to just like step up for me in like normal volume and just like push back every day, every small act. I need you to like, just step up and like, I will take care of that. Just like, don't scream at your mom and then she will come and apologize. Like, don't make a fucking drama out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is something that I sort of or just like right now, my boyfriend's also doing a PhD and he's going through a rough patch, and like, his mom will, and anytime she talks to me, she'll be like, if you were there, you would have taken care of him, it would have been so much nicer. And I'm just like, no, but I'm also in a PhD program, and it is
Yeah.
equally stressful for me. Like, I am not his mom, like it's just, and when he, like, if she does this in his presence, she never like steps up, like he never goes like, well, it's even if they're like not sexist outright in the way that you mentioned, where they feel lesser because you make more or whatever, even if it's not that, they still like, will not use their privilege to sort of support you.
I think
Absolutely.
that's an excellent point. And, if we maybe this is like a good point to get into why uh, men seem to be more right wing, or rather okay with the status quo than women, especially in STEM, is like, women, we have to stand up for ourselves. We have to sometimes get up and say, "Ki, this is wrong," or I'm not gonna make the tea, or I want to do my PhD, or yeah, whatever it is. Like, you have to question the things that people are telling you, but men never have to. The society already works for them fine. Like, the patriarchy works for you. They, you get what you want. You're the Raja Bacha. You
Yeah.
get everything that you need, and you have all the opportunities that you need. So why would they even question the status quo? It's working perfectly for them.
Yeah.
I,
And
I
like,
and I suspect that that's one of the big reasons why, maybe women tend to be more liberal, because we're forced to question the values that we're taught.
yeah, and like there's these recent NRCCA protests going on all over India, and you can definitely see so many women being vocal, being leaders, etc. And that could be one of the reasons, probably, is that as a woman, even if you're privileged, you have to sort of fight for many things. You see unfairness in life, and so you fight for other people who are experiencing it. Definitely.
I think my experience has been that you can't tell, like, yes, men, your point stands that, because men have more privilege, it works for them, so they it is in their interest to be conservative. But with women, I don't know, like, I have seen that in the face of this, I think it's a coin toss between whether they will go full right wing, because then they are, held up and given privilege in that sense,
Yeah.
um, or you go like the opposite direction, where you're like resisting becoming a feminist. And like my own sister, like, is like such an interesting example for me. Like my mom, there's all these like taboos around menstruation and stuff, right? So
Hmm.
my mom never practiced any of that. My grandmom did. Okay, so in my family, me and my sister, I don't give a shit. But like my mom was like, "Acha, theek hai, Bhagwan ke room mein mat jana." That's it. Like there is nothing else. You can do whatever else you want. My grandmother would be like, "You cannot touch where the pani ka matka is, and you cannot like go inside the kitchen. Somebody will give you food. If you want water, also you have to ask." Okay,
Yep.
so it was like you were treated like an untouchable. So like coming from that experience, my mom decided to like be a little bit more feminist, and my sister, on the other hand, went all the way back. Like when she was living with her husband, it was just her and her husband in the house, and her husband doesn't give a shit, and she was still like she would not go into the kitchen. She will do it herself, and I was just like, what is wrong with you? You
Yeah, yeah.
know? And I don't understand. Like, I feel like it is definitely a coin toss.
Yeah, and I feel like you like white women voted overwhelmingly for Trump. Upper caste women still support, like, many of them support the BJP. So I guess there's also this theory that like the white or the upper caste identity gives you a lot of privileges. So a lot of women from those sort of classes don't necessarily stand up for underprivileged women and often exploit them also.
No, I think you're right. I think you both are absolutely right that uh, so for people whom the system is working already, if say I'm someone who just wants to get married and have children, for me, there is no social currency at all in being feminist.
Yeah,
It would actually work out in my favor if I fell in line and did exactly what my parents told me and got a husband. So if that is what I want, that is what I'll do. I'm talking more about when the status quo is not working for you, right? Like so
yes,
you want to do a PhD, or you want to do an MBA, or you want to be an astronaut, or you want to do something that is not immediately available to you within the social structures that you're living in. That's when you are somewhat put in this position where you're forced to think about, wait a minute, why is this, like, why are our values this way, and push back and question them. That's all I'm saying. And
yeah.
it's not to say that all women are liberal, but I think more women have been put in a position where they have to question the status quo. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely. And compared to male counterparts, they're definitely more liberal, I would say. But talking about politics in general, I would love to know, like, how did you guys discover your own politics? How, like, growing up, did you sort of read about it, know about current affairs, and also how you discovered your own feminism in general? So yeah, let's start with you, Hardika.
Um, so, but first, I got my first politics, from my parents and from Times of India, which at least back in the day was not like very in your face right wing. They were like economically were neoliberal, but
Wait, you're from Gujarat, right, Hardika?
yes, I grew up in Gujarat,
Oh, nice. So
and
were you like swayed by the Modi way, like Gujarat model, whatever,
so
whatever?
I
Is it
will
true?
say that the blot I carry is that the only time I voted in my life as a 19-year-old, I voted for Narendra Modi, but that was his first term. It was not like after 2002. So,
That's so bad.
uh, then I was not voting for Narendra Modi. I was voting for BJP because I was very excited for voting. I asked my parents, and they said that कांग्रेस कुछ नहीं करती है, ठीक है, बीजेपी वाले खाते हैं पर काम करते हैं. And to me that made sense, like fine, at least if they're doing something, let's vote for them. So I was that was that. And I think through undergrad I was definitely like not conscious of my politics at all. I don't like using the word apolitical. I think that there is no such thing as being apolitical. I was not conscious of my politics for sure. But yeah, I think generally I used to, but still, like, I remember like reading things like Down to Earth because it was, a science and environment magazine. And in that, they talked a lot about like the Forest Rights Act, and I was like at least aware that the like the tribal people have problems asserting their rights, and there's injustice generally. So while I did not go out and protest when I was in undergrad, I at least like understood those facts. And when 2000, and also I will say that growing up, I knew enough, I don't think I knew enough Dalits. I don't think I still know enough Dalits, but I at least knew enough Muslims. And some of my closest friends have been that, and so I do understand. Like I did understand even back then, the kind of marginalization they felt. Like, for example, a very specific example, after graduation, when I moved to Calcutta for my first job, the friend who was helping me look for a house was Muslim, and he was like, I shouldn't go and talk to them. You should go and talk to the landlord saying you want to live there, you know?
Oh, wow.
And so so it
Yeah.
was like, it was things like that which like at least, even though I was not like active politically, like I understood that this is wrong. But interestingly enough, I didn't understand how Sanghi my family was. Okay. And that I only understood like in 2014, like after 2014. Um, so that was a very interesting sort of transition for me.
Yeah, like my story is like extremely similar. Like my family had always just voted BJP and similar reasoning. They were like they're just better than Congress. They're at least doing something. So yeah, I just until I went to college, I just sort of blindly supported the BJP. Actually, until I started working after college, and it was only when they did like I voted for Modi in 2014, which is I'm not proud of, but I did. But and then I only sort of started actually opposing them when they did demonetization, because like if nothing else, at least I applied a little bit of logic to understand that demonetization was objectively a disaster.
Hmm.
And many like my even like many people in my family, I saw them suffer and go through like that whole thing. So that's when I changed, but that was when I was like 20 to 23. But yeah, so like I used to be a bug before then, which is I'm not proud of it, but yeah. That was me. So anyway, what about you, Shikha?
Um, well, I think maybe you guys got a clue when I said my family used to read the Hindu. Um,
Nice.
uh, I so my mom is like very, there's no AAP in AP in
Yeah.
Telangana, but if there was, she would be like an AAP voter. She's like a very upright, middle class values, that sort of a woman. She's very fair, but I wouldn't say she's necessarily ideologically driven.
Yeah.
My dad is definitely very left leaning. Um, I don't think either of my parents ever supported BJP.
Nice.
Um, I mean, also like it's not that common in the South anyway. It's not
Yeah.
some sort of a unique situation. In South, there are a lot of regional parties, and funnily enough, like we did talk about political issues, but my parents never told me who they voted for. They always say it's a secret ballot, so we are not going to talk about it. But we discussed political issues.
Yeah.
Definitely, I think I've always been extremely aware of caste,
Yeah.
and I mean it's just because it's so pervasive in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. People talk about it all the time. People say you're this, you're that, so I'm talking to you, or I won't talk to you. uh, I was extremely aware of it. I was also extremely aware of the privilege that my own family had,
Yeah.
and not even in terms of money. And this is again something that I want to push back against when people say it's just about economic status. It's not. I mean, my parents didn't have a lot of money when we were growing up, We lived in a one-bedroom apartment, and it was a pretty middle class life, but there was a lot of privilege because we were educated and we knew people, we had contacts. Any opportunities we needed, they were there for us. These types of things. And I was also acutely aware that some of my friends or people who came from a different background just didn't have that.
Yeah.
So was, I think I was always like very politically conscious that way. I think my extended family is pretty right wing. Right now, I think a lot of my aunts and uncles have been extremely brainwashed by the BJP propaganda. They are
That's all of ours.
sorry.
That's all
Yeah,
of ours, I think.
yes, yes, yes. They are, and I've definitely dealt with it, and my family is very close. Like, uh, we, my dad has six siblings, and my mom has two siblings, and they're all in each other's lives a lot. Extremely oversharing, codependent family. And even though my own parents were not super right wing, I did definitely have to deal with these types of people. But I think I've always been a bit of a rebel. And I think, Himaya, like you, I always talk too much in family gatherings, and they're like, don't talk when elders are talking. And
Yeah.
my mom, actually like stopped taking me to gatherings. She's like, you're going to embarrass me. She's like,
It's like a blessing in disguise.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
was like, sometimes I remember like some auntie had said, when you're doing your PhD, you have so much free time. So why don't you get married and have a child?
Oh,
It's a
wow.
perfect time to do it. And I was like, auntie, why I don't need to get married for this? And
Nice.
my mom just like flipped out. She's like, how dare you talk like this?
Wow.
Apologize. You're not coming with me to functions anymore.
Yeah, like so I've taken like a pretty like anti NRCCA stand in my family. And first of all, like if you're a woman who takes a political stand, they're just like either you are a victim of propaganda or some friend has misled you. So basically, like all the uncles in my family has taken it upon themselves to educate me,
Oh my
and now
God.
they keep sending me like all of these videos from I don't know who are random like Op India and blah 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 all of them, and I'm like, guys, I know what I'm talking about. Like in my family, there I have a male cousin who's an AAP supporter, and they also keep quarreling. Like him and all the Sanghis keep quarreling, but at least he gets like minimum respect that he knows what he's talking about. I don't even get that. They're like, this person she's gone crazy. We educate her and bring her on the right path. So, so
All puns
that's,
intended.
I have
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I mean, this is something like literally every sentence that you speak sometimes, I feel like they're going to ask you for proof for this.
So
Every sentence,
yeah, I had this interesting conversation recently. I was visiting India, and we were at this dinner, and this comes up, and somebody's like talking about like how all these people in JNU, they're just like full of terrorists, and what are they doing there for? They're like 30, 40 years old. They just stay in the university, and I was like, I'm 32 years old. I'm a PhD student. Do you think I'm a terrorist? And they changed the subject so quickly as if they didn't even hear me. And I was like, but why aren't you like engaging? Like I'm not going into like the left ideology or whatever. Like you're just saying you are old and in university, hence terrorist. Like you're not even like listening to, like, what about the ABVP student who is also in JNU? Like why is he or she not a terrorist? Like why? They are the same age, they're no different, but somehow they are
This,
okay.
yeah, this though is a whole different topic about like how people like the whole media tukde tukde gang narrative or whatever. But yeah, so but like talking about like all the other women in like your family, etc. Like we always observe that, in family gatherings there's like a men's group who talk about cricket and politics, and then there's a women's group who talk about marriages and babies. And yeah, so
Yes.
that's the thing they expect you to talk about. So like, how were the women in your family? Like, were they political or even aware, as aware as the men, or were they allowed to be?
In my family,
Yeah.
women were not
Uh-huh.
political. They were
Got it.
not. And my mom didn't talk much about politics
Uh-huh.
ever. My extended aunts and uncles, like now they are. I mean, now there are so many WhatsApp messages, and it's in fact interesting to me because this is the first time I'm even hearing their opinions on Muslims or demonetization or Rahul
Yeah.
Gandhi. So I in a way I can't even be surprised because I'm not really sure what they were thinking before. They were very silent. At least the women never talked about politics.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about you, Hardik?
Yeah, I don't think they ever talked about anything to do with politics, except like I remember this one time my grandmother sort of bragging, she's fed a lot of rotis to Bharosa Shekhawat. My family
Wow.
actually, like my extended family, but my mother's side is like so deep into the Sangh. It's like she would like name drop all the time. Like my one of my mom's uncles was a pracharak with Narendra Modi, and
Oh,
one of my other uncles went to college with LK Advani. So it was like, when they were all student politicians, it was all like they were like chuddy buddies apparently. And then my great grandfather got the wind, and they got my grand uncles married, and then grahasthi, So, but no, they would all go to shakhas, and one of my uncles actually does work for BJP. So yeah, I think the women's opinions were like never asked, and 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 I think for me it was not just that they were never asked in political decisions, but also like all my aunts had like degrees, they were and stuff, so they want like a educated bride, but they don't want her to work. And there was a lot of that where you have to like cover your head with this, everything. So it was very conservative. There was never any like my mom was a very uh popular and unpopular person because she was the one who like went and talked to my uncles when they wouldn't let their like my cousin, like female cousins, like go somewhere to study. And so in that sense, like if my aunts wanted her help, she was popular. Otherwise, they would talk about how she only has like two daughters, and that's such a sad thing.
Yeah.
oh, that's yep.
Yeah, so my dad is a sonologist, okay? And we are also like two sisters. So I have a younger sister. So, and like in sonography, you can like find out what the gender of your child is. But
Hmm.
that's banned everywhere in India. So, like when my younger sister was born, there were just people who would come to my dad and be like, "But you yourself as are a sonologist, तो आपको तो पता चल ही गया होगा लड़की है, फिर भी you like let her be born. Why would you do that?"
Oh my
Wow.
god!
Yeah,
Wow.
it was
So,
just crazy.
oh my god, that's
Sorry,
so.
you were
I
saying?
have a story for my family too. So maybe it's TMI, but so my sister, when she's younger, and she was a C-section, and so my parents had decided that they did not want any other children, and sometimes with C-section they also like will
Tie the
tie your
tubes.
tube.
Yeah, my
Yeah.
mom got that too.
So
With me.
they said that yeah, just do that please, and my dad was waiting outside, And so my sister, so there we didn't know a sonographer, so we didn't know the sex of the child beforehand. And my sister was born, and she was female, and so in the middle of this surgery, right, this doctor steps out of the operating theater and calls my dad, and my dad is freaking out because he thinks something went wrong. And then she tells him that it's a girl, so are you sure you want to go ahead with the operation, or do you want to try one more time? And my dad was furious. He's like, are you fucking kidding me? Is this why you stopped and came out of the operating theater to say this? And he was just like, please finish the operation. And that is the level of just the brainwashing that's there in our society, that even doctors are afraid,
Absolutely, like
you know.
Indian gynecologist, dude. Like, you can't go to a gynecologist in India as a single
Oh
woman.
my god, yeah,
Oh
you
yeah,
can't.
that should be a separate
I
episode for sure.
Yes. I can go on and on about that for
Like,
hours.
the only frank conversation, like the first frank gynecological conversation I had was when I came to the US. Because in India, you have to lie to them. Or, like, yeah,
I'm asking for a friend.
yeah.
Or I think Swati said the other day that the euphemism is, "Are you married?"
Oh, yeah, are you
Yes.
I mean, yeah. Yeah, and like too, because my parents are doctors, like they
Yeah.
know all other doctors.
Hmm.
So there's no such thing as like patient doctor confidentiality, etc.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if
Oh
I
yeah,
tell the
what is
gynac
that?
that yeah, I've had sex, they'll go tell my parents only. So so like that is a whole other podcast topic. But
Yeah.
but like talking about like women in STEM, we've talked a lot about like how all most of the men in STEM are explicit like BJP right wing supporters. What have you guys observed in like your friends who are in engineers or even in other fields in STEM about their political opinions? Let's start with Hartika.
Um, so, when I said that I think it's a coin toss about women, I say that because I have a very, very close friend who has just gone full Sangi. Like it hurts me so much. And it's like in a way I get it because she grew up in Nagpur, and so I understand that she had all that priming. But in undergrad, like I've seen her read like Ramchandra Guha. She read basically all of Ramchandra Guha's like pop history books and everything. And then she went to like a good management school, and like I don't know, but somewhere along the way she became like such a rabid like person that I was just like, I don't understand this at all, you know. So I feel like there's two kinds of women react to like all the attention you get, all the microscope attention you get, not the good one, in IIT or generally engineering, with two things. One is just like you take positions of responsibility regardless, and one, you sort of become quiet, you just keep your head down, just graduate, right? So the women who do that kind of just like continue with that, at least as I tend to. The ones who are more active in like student organizations and stuff, they do tend to become like more vocal, more publicly about political opinions. But it can go either way. Like I feel like if you've sort of internalized the broness and then gone to a management school, then it is just like I have you like, Kimaya, you are a wonder to me. Like you went to management school and you still did not. I'm just like, wow.
It's
I
marginally better in
genuinely.
the US than in India. Yeah, because the thing is, Yeah, it's the thing with like Indian management schools is it's like all the engineers come there.
Yes, it's only
You get,
engineers. Like that test
yeah,
is optimized for engineers.
exactly. Out here, ek to the schools when they're admitting only they have like specific quotas for fields. So like ऐसा नहीं कि सारे technical को ले लेंगे. They'll
Yeah,
have some
yeah.
arts,
Oh, for
etc.
sure,
And
for sure.
US में it's not this like craziness for engineering. So you have like a decent amount of people from a lot of backgrounds. So it's like better than doing management in India at least. Is
Yeah,
I
no,
would
for
like.
sure. That is definitely true. But I will, yeah, it is. But I don't know. Like still, like if you go to a big sort of engineering, like a management school here, you still have that like competitiveness of like, oh, I need to like make more money, and you will like. I don't see people coming out of a management school and then sort of like developing a more left wing ideology, if you know what I mean.
There's definitely like a lot. Most people were right leaning, even within the Americans, and plus like all of the career choices. There's investment banking, there's consulting, both very cutthroat. And like historically, there have not been a lot of women in it. Like especially banking, though there have been like legendary stories about how horribly women were treated and like are still being treated. So like it's definitely like hyper competitive and crazy, etc. Like I sort of went into tech, so I avoided much of like all of that craziness, but it's definitely there.
Yeah, I think hyper competitive environments are definitely more sexist, and uh, I worked a lot with uh, doctors in my PhD, and more than engineering, when I hear stories about that the kind of stories I've heard, I a doctor that I know had to hide her pregnancy or she wouldn't get a job, and there is a lot of attrition. I mean, a lot of people start the program and never finish it. It's extremely competitive. It's extremely aggressive, masculine environment.
And can I
Yeah,
just
Yeah.
say there's almost like a pride in the fact that oh, not everybody graduates. We cull out the weak, and that shit is so like I don't know. It gives you the creeps.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand what is yeah, like it's nothing to be proud of, for sure. And you're failing. I mean, also, so this uh surgeon who was forced to lie about her pregnancy, and so she told me like one way that she deals with it is when she has male residents and they have a baby, she forces them to take paternity leave. She's like, no, your female colleague is doing it, so you also do it. And that is the only way to kind of equalize it, is like you force the men to participate in domestic activities too. I mean, that's the only way, and I think that's like an interesting strategy. But yeah.
It's interesting. But like yeah, like if I mean ultimately like if you want to make the situation better, like that men taking up more of the child care and sort of the household responsibility is ultimately the only way.
Hmm.
Like even in India, like they passed this like maternity leave law which gives 6 months maternity leave, but it's only women, like men
Right.
don't have
Right.
anything. So
Right.
it never really changes the problem that women ultimately are stuck with all of the work.
Yeah. I mean,
And pardon me if I'm
absolutely.
incorrect, but I thought that was only for women government employees, which is like a statistical error, basically, as far as India's population is concerned.
Right.
I mean, I might be incorrect. I don't know, but that was my understanding.
Yeah, but I mean, even India is still marginally better than the US. इधर तो किसी को भी नहीं, there's no
Name it.
preference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah,
A-
but
And even beyond, domestic family versus career. I mean, beyond a point, I don't want to go to that topic much more. But even like personality wise, like if I am talking to a colleague of mine and we're both at a conference, we're both on equal setting. I think even then, when you talk to them, it's just a different interaction. Like I said, like anything that I say, in an academic environment, I feel like they would question it. They'd be like, "What's the proof? Where's the proof? Show
Yeah.
me a citation." Or there are some cases where I was writing this open source software with an undergrad who was working under me. I mean, he was like my trainee type of a person. And when people came to ask questions about it, they would ask him and not me,
Oh wow,
just because
that's
he
like,
was, yeah. And I mean, I don't know if it's a question of comfort, or you just want to talk to a guy, or you think you're, I really don't understand. And actually, when I was doing my PhD, so we realized that first of all, there was no female representation in our department at all. There were very few women, and they were all in different labs. And we didn't know each other, so we started a group called Women of Vanderbilt Institute of Surgery and Engineering. And so I was one of the founding members, and we started it. And then I slowly found out that it's not just me who experiences these things. It's everybody. Everybody has the same story. It's overwhelming. I mean,
Yeah.
it's interesting,
Did,
even in the
did,
US.
did Vanderbilt do anything about it though?
So I think w- uh, us starting this group was something that they wanted to showcase, let's see what we are doing for diversity. But I think so. We did start a lot of programs. So one thing is we started a mentorship program where we had women who graduated already from this program, or women professors, to come talk about their experiences. We had coffee talks. Sometimes we had some events where we invited even like men,
Yeah.
and just open up the discussion and like confront the problems and see what they have to say. And that was actually surprisingly, they were receptive to it. I mean, I think if you sit down and talk to them and say that, boss, this is what you're doing, they do listen to you most of the time. I think a lot of them are just not even aware of their behavior, and I think the most successful event we had was we had a screening of Hidden Figures. And after that, I did this short um, epilogue of where I gave the statistics of women in academia, how many PhDs and so on. And and then we had like a discussion. It was probably one of the best discussions, where like men were finally beginning to see why this is an issue they were talking up. And a couple of times, some like desi guys in my lab, when I said something, they were like, "Go Shika, Hidden Figures, right?" And I was like, "Okay, this is too much, but sure." Some impact has happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's better than like the other way around.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know. They might have been mocking, but at least they were thinking about these issues a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Like we did some of that in my business school as well, and it did seem to like open up a lot of people's eyes, even in terms of race, like which is a big thing
Mm-hmm.
here, and like a lot of white people and even us Indians were like so completely blind to many of the things that we said and things like that. So it was great to at least have those conversations.
I mean, race is a whole different
Yeah,
issue in the US. That, yeah.
yeah, definitely. Awesome.
yeah, but like, talking, because at least we talk explicitly about race in the US, I have also like realized how racist Indians are.
Mm-hmm.
And so that has like, I think that has made my mom more uncomfortable around me, where I think like in from Gujarat, it's a there is a direct line of like people like emigrating to Africa to work
Oh
because
yeah.
you know they believe that Asians make businesses there believe that Asians make
Mm-hmm.
better managers because they have no problems being cruel to other people of color. Uh,
Yeah.
so
Opportunity
it was really,
offenders.
yeah, it was very interesting for me, like, if I said like if I said something, not no I'm sorry, um, like we were talking to, we were at this dinner and we were talking to someone, and they just made a generic, very racist statement about, like, people they interact with in Africa, and I don't even remember which city. I'm really sorry. But and I just, later I told my mom I thought that was very racist. And she just like kept silent, like she just didn't want to even like engage with me about like this whole thing, that we also need to like examine ourselves and
Hmm.
see, like, with all our privilege, how we are oppressing other people.
Absolutely. I think Indians are just blind to race in general. Like,
I mean, Indians here, my cousins, I have a lot of family in the US, and some of my cousins have definitely said really racist things, and they've been living here for longer than I have. Some of them
yeah,
have been living here 20 years, and they have no awareness of it. They will just say it, and sometimes they use like a Hindi word or a Telugu word. But come on, I mean, that doesn't make it better that you're not using the word in English, right?
Right.
And I actually find that that Indian community here can actually be super racist, and they seem to have no awareness of the issues at all.
And I
absolutely.
Like,
think
I
it
think a lot
comes
of them,
naturally. Sorry, I was saying, I think it
yeah,
comes naturally to them because they're so used to talking like that about with caste, that it's like,
yeah,
yeah, of
yeah,
course, like, everyone is like that. They are lazy.
right,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And like, the only time we acknowledge race is when we have to claim that we've been racially discriminated against, but not actually like stand up for people of other races who are not even
right.
that privileged. Like Indian Americans are pretty privileged.
I
Yeah,
mean, they
but even
complain
even
about,
in that, they will, like, be white, like apologists. Like, I have never faced discrimination. Like,
uh-huh,
there will be enough apologists even there. Like, they will not even acknowledge that we have ever faced anything.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Really great. I think this was an amazing discussion. I think if we go on talking after this, the three people who have survived till now will also stop listening. So I'm gonna wind up now, but before we wind up, why don't you guys give us your recommendations? Any books, movies, like podcasts, etc. Hardika?
So I am reading this book. In full disclosure, this was written by a person who taught me at YF. His name is Jonathan Gill Harris. He's written this book called Masala Shakespeare, which I am absolutely in love with, because it's about like a textual analysis of. Bollywood movies, and how in a lot of ways they are, they may have the spirit of what Shakespeare did, with, like, mixing languages, and so yeah, it's a very fun book, and it's something I read to like get away from everything that is making me sad. So
Nice. That sounds really interesting. I'll check it out.
yeah, it's a fun book.
Nice. What about you, Shikha?
Um, so I think since we ended on the topic of racism, I recently read Americana,
Oh,
which
wow. That's a great book.
is an amazing book. I mean, I wanted to underline every line in that book, because even though it's from the perspective of a Nigerian immigrant, it's so similar. I think we have very similar backgrounds, because they were a colony, we were a colony. It was the same sort of like obsession with English language and this anglicized upbringing, and then you come here and the experiences that you have here as a woman and a woman of color. It was amazing. I loved it. I think it's probably definitely my favorite book
Oh, nice.
that I've ever read.
That's great. Yeah, it's one of my favorites as well. It's an amazing book. I'm a Chimamanda fan in general. Like even her TED talk and like
She is
why.
amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. So great. My recommendation is like, so the first one is Home Fire by Camilla Shamsi. It's like, so it's like a retelling of the story of Antigone, which is like I think an ancient Greek story, but she's brought it to modern day Britain, and it's about sort of the Islamic identity in the West, Islamophobia, and also like how young Muslim men are swayed by Islamic radicalism, etc. So it's a really good book, and it won like some award. It's won many awards like 2 3 years ago. But it's a great book. And the second one is a series, and it's a really fun series on Netflix called Derry Girls, and it's about basically four girls in high school in Ireland, and this is during the 90s. So there's a lot of 90s references, and it's during like the whole IRA sort of. I don't have a lot of knowledge of Irish politics, but essentially IRA was like very active at the time, and then so all of that was going on. But basically, these girls do a ton of crazy things, and it's just very fun. So I love watching it. So check it out. So well, with that, we wind up the podcast. Thank you so much, Shika and Hardika, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was really
It
fun.
was
Yeah.
we should like do this more. And
Yeah.
Yep.
I can't wait to be famous.
yeah, yeah, people will ask you for autographs soon.
Yeah, yeah.
Great. Well, and thank you everyone for listening. We'll join you in another episode soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
नारी बनके